Van Durst, a tranquil conscience and moral simplicity as a source of balance. The testimony of the Spirit. Van Durst, presented in the second part of Heaven and Hell, brings a clear and accessible lesson about spiritual life. True serenity after passing does not depend on erudition, social positions, or great external deeds, but on a simple, upright conscience that is at peace with itself. Van Durst manifests in a calm manner, without disturbance, without deep regrets, and without anguish. His account reveals a spirit who, although he does not consider himself perfect, lives in a state of inner balance. This condition demonstrates that spiritual happiness is not a privilege of the few, nor the result of an extraordinary life, but a natural consequence of honest choices that are consistent with basic moral values. Modern depth psychology helps to understand this state. People who live according to their principles, without major internal conflicts or repressed guilt, tend to exhibit greater emotional stability. Unfragmented awareness generates serenity. On the spiritual plane, this same logic holds. When there are no deep contradictions between what one thinks, feels, and does, suffering loses its space. Spiritism teaches that Van Durst did not achieve this balance through exceptional merit, but through a life marked by simplicity, fulfilled duty, and the absence of deliberate wrongdoing. This is fundamental. Spiritual suffering does not arise from imperfection itself, but from the awareness of the wrongdoing committed or from conscious moral negligence. Where there is basic righteousness, there is relative peace. Modern science reinforces this idea by demonstrating that balanced systems function better with less internal tension. In biology, organisms in balance exhibit greater stability. In psychology, internal coherence reduces anxiety. In spiritual consciousness, the same principle applies. Balance generates tranquility. Conflict generates suffering. Another important point in Van Durst's account is the absence of surprise in the face of life's continuity. This indicates that, even without grand intellectual formulations, his moral view of existence was already aligned with the idea of responsibility and continuity. Death does not confront him with internal ruptures, but merely with a change of state. Spiritism shows, with this testimony, that spiritual happiness does not require idealized holiness. It requires honesty with oneself, respect for others, and a sincere effort to live correctly within one's own possibilities. Van Durst represents millions of anonymous consciences that, far from any spotlight, silently build states of lasting peace. This account also invites us to reconsider the notion of spiritual success. It is not the grand speeches or external appearances that determine the future state of consciousness, but the intimate quality of the choices made in daily life. Small acts of justice, respect, and responsibility build a solid foundation for spiritual life. Van Durst teaches us that future life does not begin with dramatic judgments, but with the meeting of consciousness with itself. When this meeting is serene, the transition occurs naturally and peacefully. If this testimony helped you reflect on simplicity, inner coherence, and true peace, like, share, and leave your comment. Your participation helps this message reach more people.